Visit MikeThompson.com. Your adventure starts here at Mike Thompson RV.
Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. Hey, it's Hammer. You're watching Happening Now. Hey, thank you guys. We get such a great response from our last show. We had an amazing entrepreneur here, and he's back again today because of you. I can't believe how many of you contacted us, subscribed, wrote comments, saying how much you wanted to hear more from this amazing guy. This guy created a huge empire in the restaurant field, and I'm talking about the amazing Mr. Steele Platt. Steele, how you doing today?
Doing great, thanks.
Hey, I'm glad that you're back today. We
Happy to be back, yeah.
Finish up what we were talking about.
Yeah.
You know, Brandy, you were real concerned about his, pipes?
I was very concerned about his pipes.
You want to elaborate on that?
Well, he said plumbing is plumbing, and I call bullshit. He said it only cost $400,000, and for us regular folk, $400,000 is a lot of money, fella. I don't know if you knew that.
Wasn't my money.
I wasn't sure if you were aware of the fact that $400,000 is an obscene amount of money.
He was brilliant. He got somebody else to pay for that plumbing.
Hey.
That's the way it works.
We all do what we have to do to get forward in life, okay?
But really what I want to know about, guys, is Steele, 250 taps. First of all, okay, back then that's just amazing, number one. Number two, how do you even get all that beer? Was there even 250 different types of beer running around back then, you know?
It was the mid-'90s when I started putting the business plan together, and that was kind of the rage of the microbrewery era. So there were a lot of flavors coming out, and my initial concept with writing the business plan was 400 handles.
Wow.
And I think I mentioned that to you before, and then when we got into the architecture, I could only fit 250 because you have to space them out. And the room that I got, the building that I got in Long Beach would only house about 250 handles, but I wanted 400. So.
But okay, for everybody out there, you might have 250 handles, but you have to have at least probably 2 backups or 3 backup kegs for each tap, right?
Well, the good thing about having that many kegs is if you're out of one, there's other ones to choose from. So
Sure.
that was part of the plan. And another rule I had at the first one, that if any keg went bad, they'd have to replace it. If they didn't, then we would just get another beer that would sell.
Most restaurants have 6 taps. You know what I mean? 6 to 8. And if they blow a keg, they have to have storage for that backup keg, or
it was a leap of faith. I only had one cooler room, so they were stacked 2 stories high and on racks, and each rack had 2 levels. So the kegs were 4 high in this little room, and all the beer lines went under the floor in the middle of the island bar, and it was 250 handles. And it's a big leap of faith to have that much inventory, and hopefully everybody told me, how are you going to sell all that? How are you going to go through inventory without it going bad? And my answer was build it and they'll come. But the number of flavors that we had was what actually brought people in.
Well, the thing that blows me away is that I ran music venues and owned music venues, and if a keg went bad, the beer companies told me, too bad, Hammer. So that is impressive that you got them to say, oh, it went bad, we'll take care of it.
It's not easy because, there's a day you can order and there's a day that they will deliver, and so you have to kind of wait in that transition. And like I said, if they have 6 or 8 taps, they have an IPA, they have a lager, they have a stout, they have just one of each kind of scenario. So they run out of that one, and people are like, oh, you don't have that, and they're like, well, I have a can of beer underneath here if you want to try that instead. But he had 40 IPAs and 40 lagers and 150 stouts. It's so he had others to choose from. It's super innovative. I appreciate the fact that people take those leaps of faith, because it sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. In his case, it was a fucking brilliant idea.
Yeah, part of that innovation is to allow people to sample that, right?
Yeah.
Give them 6 to 8 small samples to go through, and Steele, I think that's a big part of your plan.
The
was that
flights,
as well.
right?
Yeah, we had the 6-pack. We had a 6-pack, which we brought, I think it was 6 3-ounce glasses. out to them. But that really kind of evened out the flavors of the beer. But they all sold. Ironically, I never had any real problems with beer going bad. We also engineered a new system. We reduced the diameter of the beer tubes, which decreased the amount of surface area that beer goes bad on. And so we went into surgical tubing, and we cleaned the lines ourselves. So beer lasts about 45 days on the shelf.
Okay.
Most people don't know that, but if you have a good system that keeps it cold, clean is the important thing with beer. You have to clean those lines out, or they get what's called snot on the handles. Yep. So when we first opened, we let all the beer companies clean the lines.
They normally do.
Yeah, but we found out they kind of cannibalized other guys' beer and put pennies in their kegs, and which means you can't tap it after that. And every beer that we had a different pressure valve on it. So it was really engineered. We got better as we went on. We just re-engineered this whole system of bringing remote beer systems from the keg room over to the center of the bar.
Who did you have engineer that for you?
Well, originally I just came out with the idea the best way to show that many handles in the design was an island bar, obviously. And then the center of my bar was the beer. I actually put booze in the foreground, kind of hid it. And so you'd walk into the, I remember when the Long Beach one opened, people would turn the corner and they'd see an expression on their face like, wow, holy cow. And they would walk all the way around the bar. And beer handles are important. That's what grabs the customer in, that they're unique and different. It generates some interest.
Little works of art.
Yeah.
They are. I think so. But
They each have a little story on each handle.
Yeah, I agree. I was one of those people that walked into, or floated into the Long Beach location. And when I first saw that bar, and being in the industry that I've been in my entire life, I was like, I've been in every bar on the planet, and walking in there, it was stunning.
Yeah.
And Hammer, I wouldn't hesitate to say this section 2 here we're doing with Steele is like we went from his bar in Colorado, which was very successful. He moved on from that, got his ideas from there, but now we're talking about the Yard House, if y'all haven't figured that out yet. And I was always told, Steele, that the Yard House was based off of a yard of beer. Is that true?
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Who came up with that? Was that you?
No, the yard was designed in the 1800s. It was actually given to stagecoach drivers in England. So,
A yard of beer?
So
Exactly what someone driving needs.
yeah.
A stagecoach. It's not a car.
So they're high
Calm
up.
down.
So they're 8 feet up, and then they have to hold on to their horses. I don't know if they served beer in the yard, but the story goes that it was long enough to hand it to the driver, so he didn't have to reach down and grab it. So, and then it just became kind of an institution. And when I owned the boiler room in Denver, there was a place in Colorado Springs that served yards, and then that's really what interested me in the boiler room, was to go from these pint mugs and things like that to start serving yards. And while I owned the boiler room, it was a small little place. It was probably 3,500 square feet. We did about 17,000, 20,000 yards a year. And I did a little marketing on it. I said we did more yards than Elway. So it was kind of good. But
Very cool.
But that was a busy place, and that was with only 20 taps, the boiler room. So I went from 20 to 250.
I always wondered a couple things. Number one, how did you clean those things? And number two, you must have broke a heck of a lot of them.
We did, but we had a $25 deposit. So if you broke it, you paid for it. But I remember, I think it was the second week we were open in Long Beach, and I was standing by the hostess stand looking out on the patio, and I think I saw a chair fly, and then all these yard swords coming out, and everybody was like using them as a weapon kind of thing. And so we had to manage it a little bit better after that. But
That's
the
fantastic.
deposit kind of, made people be responsible. And we ended up making our own yards in Mexico, our half yards.
Oh, nice.
After a while, the full yards, we actually discontinued in the third or fourth year of the company, because we're expanding pretty fast, and we're going into new cities, and most city council police departments don't like people holding 3 pints in their hand.
Right.
So we just went to the half yard.
Yeah, you kind of think about that. You go to Las Vegas, for example, and you see those tourists walking around town with those bright orange or pink, those are half yards. Those are half yard cocktails. So
Yeah,
that's
but
what you're talking
it's
about.
also like rot gut vodka
Exactly,
or whatever that they're
yeah.
putting in there. Yeah, you're gonna get ugly in the face when you're drinking that. But
it gives
you
you an idea of the
they're
size.
like, it's $7, for a yard of
And they're
sugar
plastic,
and
so.
cheap vodka, non-distilled vodka.
Well, and you don't think about that in a lot of our music venues. We were only allowed to serve 16 ounces. That was it. I mean, you can't go any above that.
So we had the half yard, the yard, and then we had the pints, and then we had the 6-packs. To clean them, we customized sinks long enough to hold them with long brushes, and we had the 3-compartment, 4-compartment sink. So we would dip in a yard in the soap, and then the rinse, and then the sanitizer.
Right.
I've never been one for the 6-pack samplers. I've always think the best way to try a beer is with a proper pint, 16 ounces, to give it its full shot. And I think that also helps your 250 taps in one place problem, because now I'm sampling more beers in a higher volume and committing to the half yard that I really want.
Sure.
I like the little flights though, just that little shot of beer so I can taste everything and then figure out what the hell I like.
Well, a lot of people like that. So, Steele, let me ask you a question. It's, people they had to walk into that Long Beach location and go, wow, look at that bar. But I would think that's probably why you grew so fast. A lot of guys that had space probably went, I want this restaurant in my facility.
Mm-hmm. Well, the first year was really rough. We had to find ourselves. We had 40 menu items.
Big menu.
But 40, it only opened with 40. When I sold it in 2007, we had about 120 menu items. So we added menu items every year. But with 40 menu items and all that beer, and nobody really had that kind of balance, where my goal was just, to balance food with alcohol to create the most efficient profitability. So we ended up doing around 55-45 food to alcohol. And that was unheard of back then. Most big restaurant chains wouldn't get near it because they'd be labeled a bar.
Right.
And corporate chains back in the 90s didn't want to be a bar. They wanted to be a restaurant. So we maintained that balance by serving good food with beer and having a good bar atmosphere and good beer to generate food sales. So it was a loop, a circle that really generated our sales, which averaged out to be close to $10 million a store as we grew.
But you also added that music aspect as well. I mean, you had so many elements that just made it work perfectly.
The thing I liked about it is, and I'm sure everybody out there, you'd go in with a group of friends, and that's really a place where you go with a group of friends, and everybody wants different food. You had sushi, you have pizza, you got an amazing menu back then.
It was balanced. I mean, when I wrote the business plan, I didn't have a chef involved, so I just kind of picked the foods I liked. And then our first chef came in. He put his touches on it. It was Mike Docalero. He was a local chef in Newport Beach for a while. And then he left, and we got Carlito Jackson. And when he came, it really changed for the better. I mean, he's an incredible chef. And I tell people the day that I actually made him a partner, sold him part of the company, along with Harold Herman, who was the first general manager.
Did he become the president of the company or vice president of the company?
He grew from the first general manager to director of operations to president. And then eventually when we sold to private equity, I think the last 2 years in the private equity time, I allowed him or gave him the CEO position.
How difficult was it for you to, I mean, I know you got all that money, but to relinquish something that was just your brainchild and something that you worked so hard on every day and just kind of give it up to someone else and then stand back and watch the changes happen and maybe they're good, maybe they're bad.
Well, part of entrepreneurship, most people learn, is you have to, to succeed and grow, you have to trust others, and you have to allow those people to prove themselves with responsibilities. And I think by allowing certain people to do what they're best at, I'm not a good restaurant manager. I can hire a good one. I'm not a really great chef, but I can hire one. So to make those decisions, you really have to allow people to do what they do best, and then really look at it from like a 30,000 square foot level looking down, and you're just guiding a big ship, but you got to let people do their jobs. And you also have to be there that if they don't do their jobs, then you make the changes.
Well, I think it's super important, and I think everybody here would agree with me. And I was telling one of our marketing people, Martha, that I always try to hire people better than me. You know, it's like you said, I'm not a chef, but I want to hire the best chef.
Yeah.
So you have the best experience at your restaurant.
Well, going to school, college, hotel, restaurant school, I remember a management class, and the teacher said, the best managers are the ones that manage least. And so basically my job as like the founder of the company with the concept, I just started the ball rolling. All of a sudden there's dozens, hundreds, thousands of people involved, and they all had input, and they all made Yard House what it is. It doesn't take one person. It takes a whole lot of people, and one person can't do it. And I was fortunate to have a really good team of the executives that I had 100% faith and trust in. We argued, we disagreed, but we talked to each other after those meetings. And then all the thousands of employees, I think I had about 20,000 employees when we sold in 2007. But it takes a little bit from every person to really make a successful
But
concept.
still, that's the one thing I don't think people realize. You started this, you were tending bar and you didn't even know how to tend bar. And you, all of a sudden, 12 years later or 10 years later, whatever it was, you're a guy who's not being employed, you're employing 20,000 people. That in itself is amazing.
Well, it's all based on that growth, and that's a whole separate story, how we grew it and picked locations and how we built the engines. I told on the growth it's like a plane, single engine plane, then you have 2 engines on a plane, then you have 3 engines on a plane, and that's going to take you to that next step. And when we sold it in 2007, we had 16 stores, and we had 10,000. Each store employed about 250 people, so that was more like the 4,000. I was thinking when I sold it, when it went public, it was more up in the 20s. So,
Steele, speaking of that point, when you sold it, and I don't want to get into numbers because we don't really need to do that here now, but it was a big chunk of change when you sold that off. How do you manage that? How do you look at that number and go,
it's just like plumbing. It's no big deal. Plumbing is plumbing.
Price is a price.
Plumbing is plumbing.
I mean, you got to get financial advisors involved. Do you look at diversifying? I mean, what do you do with a big chunk and go, oh, geez, I just sold this company?
Well, you have to be approached first, so it's not like I listed it. And it's also a group think. I have investors. I had, in 2007, I had about 100 investors that help us grow the company. I did it without banks, just private investment. So when you get to the point where somebody approaches you with selling, and then you have a magic number. In this case, private equity approached me probably in 2005, threw out a number. It wasn't a magic number. It was a little lower than what I wanted and what I felt was best for the return on the investment for my investors. So I told them, you can pay this price now, or you can wait 2 years and pay for it. And they came back in 2 years and paid for almost the price I kind of mentioned, which was we sold basically half in 2007 for $200 million. Yeah.
What's fascinating about that, Steele, is I've invested in a lot of businesses that didn't do so well, and I've invested in some that have done amazingly well. But restaurants are really tough, and every one of your investors that I know, and I know quite a few of them, all said, what a fabulous job you did and how straight up you were with them.
Yeah, I always come from, they're the ones that are allowing an entrepreneur to be in business. So they come in first position as far as I'm concerned. So my whole feeling was really to respect their investment, give them a good return, and watch over their investment. So, and you have to balance that with your employees. You have to balance that with your customers. And a lot of people go around saying there's priorities of who's first, who's second. They're all kind of come in first. They're all important. You just have to treat each of them differently.
The other thing I wanted to talk about, and I'm not sure exactly what the wording was, but you guys had a charity that you'd go in and let's say your bill was $550 and it says leave a little more. What was the name of that?
Round It Up.
Round It Up. That's right.
Round It Up America. So that was an idea that Harold Herman, who was president probably at the time, and our marketing person, Jennifer Weirheim, kind of really made happen. I think in collective meetings and things like that, we all discussed it because we always got approached for charities, and you get approached by 30 charities a month, easy.
Sure.
And they all want the free dinner or the free coupons or something to give away. So we felt, why don't we create a system that kind of can really generate its own and just give them the system. So I think Harold and Jennifer primarily really took that and ran with it, and now it's a really big deal. So,
I mean, what kind of money are we talking here?
it was a lot back then. I remember we used to hand checks a lot, but you get in touch with Harold or Jennifer now, but it's in the multi-millions.
Tax-wise, though, how much does that help your company?
It doesn't help us at all. It's just the people, like they round up from $5.50 to $6. The 50 cents went into a separate account. It didn't act as a write-off or sales for us. So we weren't contributing it. It was kind of a peel off to where it went into its own account.
And did that go to a number of charities?
Yeah, so they would, again, Harold and Jennifer were primarily in charge of this. We would have trounces we'd have a big fund, and then we would break it up in certain charitable groups, mostly local from where the restaurant came from. Now they're in all restaurants. I mean, it's everywhere. It's spread from Yard House to other things, but Yard House created the Rounded Up.
Ace Hardware is doing it. I went there the other day. Do you want to round up? Yeah, I'll do that.
Grocery stores, yeah.
Grocery stores.
I don't know if we stimulated that. I think we were more into the restaurant field, but we could have inspired somebody to do the same thing. Yeah.
Either way, you can't tap a card without rounding it up a little bit these days.
So, Steele, now that you're kind of winding down a little bit, you've sold a bunch of your properties, you're relaxing, you don't have as much stress in your life except for a new little one. Yeah.
I was like baby mamas. What are we talking about?
What's
Dad?
the
Talking about
next
little bars,
chapter?
Tiny
Dad,
bars.
is that you?
Yeah. What's the next
10
chapter?
seater bars. Sorry.
What's the next chapter look like?
It was a great ride. I mean, started at 96, 2007, we sold half of it for $200 million. And then for 5 years later, the private equity company, TSG, which was a great experience.
They owned a lot of companies, though, in that field, didn't they?
They invested in a lot, Famous Amos, Vitamin Water, a lot of big deals. We're their first restaurant entity that they invested in. And so most private equity companies want to be in a project for 5 years and they want to get out. So we sold almost on that exact fifth year anniversary. And we sold to Darden Restaurants, who owns Olive Garden. So we sold it for $585 million.
Nice payday.
Private equity got their payback. When we went private equity in 2007, we took out about 80% of the private investors. We gave them all their money back, and I kind of drew a line of the bigger investors, and I wanted to keep some of them in it to finish the ride,
Sure.
per se. So when we sold Darden, we was done, and that was my last day. Basically, was about a month after we sold. I remember walking out of the building. We had a 25,000 square foot office with over 100 people in it, and Yard House was on top of the building. It was kind of a sad day for me just to kind of walk away.
Oh,
Yeah, that's what.
No party,
you would know.
no parade, nothing.
just a pocket full of cash.
Yeah, and it was just.
I mean,
Yeah.
you weren't that sad.
No,
Maria.
I'm not complaining at all. But it was just kind of a surreal moment that
We're
was
eating steak, son.
it was the idea that at one time was in your head. It didn't even exist, and then you saw it grow with actual physical restaurants, growth of all the people. We grew to 20, 30 states. We used to open about 4 or 5 a year. All the opening parties, all the employees, and then just to basically kind of thank you, Steele.
Well,
we appreciate it. You kind of hand the baby. It's not even a baby; it's a teenager. And
Well, you're kind of like an athlete, a pro athlete. You worked all that time. You've in the limelight for 5 or 6 years or 12 years or however long it is, and then the next day, nobody knows who you are.
Yeah, so I was retired. Yeah, so it becomes a big part of you. I kind of lost my identity, and that's why I'm staying in Newport Beach because
But you never lost your happy hour location. That was always there for you.
the happier, yeah. So it was just after that, it was kind of, you're still going at 100 miles an hour. I tried to open, well, I didn't try. I was going to open another restaurant, and it just didn't work out. It was out in the desert.
You were talking about that for a while.
Yeah, and I was excited about it, and then some things just didn't work out. I didn't really feel good about it. A lot of people say just take a year off. And I kind of went right into it again. And then a couple things happened, just made me change my mind. So I got out of that. But now it's just, I just been retired, and I always keep talking about opening a little bar in here and there. And it's kind of tough these days with the way California is and all the hurdles you have to do as a business owner. It's really tough.
Steele, I wanted to ask you a question. We talked a lot about your acumen with music and how that really affected your restaurants, which you told us, off camera a little bit more about that, which blew me away, which basically you sent it out to all your restaurants at the same time, and they played the music the whole time. But you also had a artist, Jerome Gastaldi, I believe his name is. A friend of mine is a very good friend of his, and I've visited his house. Wonderful guy. Why I call him Artist Bob, I'm not sure. I don't know if he goes by that or not, but tell us a little bit about the art installations in all your places.
So the original concept that I came up with, I wrote the business plan with nobody else involved. It was just me. So then, Harold comes into the picture, Carlito comes into the picture, a lot of people come in the picture, and that's when the inputs start coming in to make the concept, not just what I think it should be, but a collaboration of what a lot of input
The team thinks it
does
should be.
for the concept. So originally, I was a neon guy, Budweiser sign, Miller Lite sign, and Harold said, let's just put a little more art in. And I'm like, that sounds like a good idea. So I remember, his real name's Bob Abbott, but Gastaldi came in, and he was friends with Harold, and he did our first painting in the Long Beach Yard House. It was a off-colored American flag with a bull skull in the middle of it. And it was really cool. So long story short, every restaurant that's ever opened has only been Gastaldi's art.
Wow.
And it's inspired by the state or the location that we're going in. So that creates some atmosphere, and the second part of the atmosphere is the music. And the music to me was probably the most important thing. I was the only one in charge of it. I picked every song every day for 12 years. And I did it from my house, and I picked specific songs, not categories. And this is before probably streaming and all these music channels are at Pandora. All these things weren't around. They had Muzak back then, and you never know what was going to play. So I actually picked specific songs. We were classic rock that were really meal appropriate. So I would go from 11 to 2:33 for lunch, and then 2:33 to 6 for happy hour music, which I bring it up a little bit in BPMs, bring it back down for dinner. And then late night I called left and right turns. So I would go into classic rock, 80s, 70s, disco, and pick 2 or 3 songs. But every song that I picked was related to the song before it and to the song after it. And so I would really blend them together. And it would take about an hour every day to make the playlist. And I never wanted to hear the same songs twice. That same playlist plays over and over again. So I really mixed them all up.
I dig
and
that. I think
the probability of me putting a lunch with this happy hour and that dinner category was done. But it really worked out well. Nobody was allowed to touch the music. I made the file on a computer every morning, and it got sent over the internet to every Apple computer, which automatically loaded it. So every playlist was the same playlist in every Yard House every day, and every song was the same song played at that time in every Yard House.
But I think you said something. I know what your favorite album was for Yard House, and that was Hotel California.
Yeah.
I was going to ask that, like, if you were stranded on a desert island, you can only have one album, what would it be?
I picked Loggins and Messina. But,
Loggins and Messina.
There's too many to pick. You have to say 5 albums. Maybe.
5.
There you go.
5.
Why stick to 1?
Wow.
I mean, but Hotel California was one that you were it really brought Yard House to you, right?
I just, when you stand in the bar, you create the atmosphere, and it's like your baby.
Yeah.
And the music is what fills in your atmosphere. It really
Everyone knows
fills
the
in the
Eagles,
dead spots.
right?
But just for the beer and the music, I mean, it was Steely Dan, Fleetwood Mac, the Eagles, Eric Clapton. Everybody wants to hear that. And then you pick the classics out, Crosby, Stills, and Nash. I mean, you can just keep going on and on. Zeppelin to
It's feel-good
AC/DC
music
to-
that everyone knows the words to, and everybody kind of just
Yeah.
vibes with. Because
The way I
it's,
picked the song was if I didn't know the song in 5 notes, I'd go to the next song on the album. So I actually had to load, this is before digital, I had to load every song on every CD into the digital mode. And so I'd go through every album and play every song in 5 seconds, 5 seconds, 5 seconds.
At least
If I
it
didn't know
was an
the song-
8-track.
Yeah, I know. But I just really wanted our unique system for Yard House.
the best mixtape ever.
But last time we talked about music a little bit last time, guys. But and I think Troy, you said this. I've walked out of places, and I like to go to dive bars, but I like old rock and roll. But when they got this tunes thing and everybody can play it on their phone, and this crappy music comes on, it's like
Well, you need a flow. You need this smooth continuum in music, and you can't jump around. I mean, I think, unfortunately, say now, Yard House now, I don't think has that smooth flow of music. It's a little sporadic, where I felt that I could bring you up high and bring you back down, bring you back up, but you can't jump around.
Do you know how they're doing it now? I mean,
I think the computer picks a bucket out of a category, picks a song out of a category.
I don't know what their categories are, but I think I've heard the same Blink 182 and Smash Mouth songs the last 5 times I've been in a Yard House.
Well, I mean,
I
like
only
that's
wanted-
what I was saying about you relinquishing your kind of power over that. You had this system in place, and now it is no longer there, and it's kind of painful to watch.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of it's there, but I was a big believer when I started that the dog wags the tail, not the other way around. So I had everybody come in the beginning, go, I hate this music. Why are you playing classic rock? And I said, well, that's kind of our concept is classic rock, whether it's mellow, medium, or high strung. But I kept it honest, and I fought them for it. And the only time I brought new music in was after 9:30. When you could bring it up a little bit, and that was in the late 90s. You had a lot of great bands, and I got a lot of input from all my waiters and waitresses, and, well, they call them servers now, to where the music maintained the classic rock theme, and people appreciated it. And I had a lot of comments into the second, third, fourth year where I come here for the music. I love the playlist. I love to hear these songs. I don't get to hear them anymore. Now you can hear them on Pandora and Spotify and things like that.
I noticed you chuckled when you said waiters and waitresses, and now they call them servers.
Well, it's like flight attendants and
You just got to be
stewardess,
politically correct.
It's got to be politically correct.
Now you have to, I don't know, there's a list of identifications now. Back then it was waiter.
Before we get out of here and go have a cocktail ourselves, if there was one thing, Steele, in this whole amazing ride that you've had that you could have done different, what would that be?
I don't think I'd do anything different. I'm maybe have less partners than I would have been, made a little bit more money, but but even if you say that, those partners add so much to the equation and are also responsible for the success. So what I learned in Denver, where I really own most of everything, I didn't really have a lot of investors because my landlord was my investor at that time. This time I had four partners, and then we had over 100 investors. And the investors were quiet, but the partners, I mean, we ended up giving 10% of the company to the employees, to the management staff when we sold. But really adding those, the partners.
But that keeps it family, though. That's smart.
Right. No, that's
But
brilliant.
you have to give up.
It should be like
you have
that.
to give up a piece of the pie.
Right.
I always said you can own 100% of a pie, but the pie is really small. But if you have a small piece of a big pie, it could be more than the small pie. And that comes with I think the inclusion and the involvement with other people adding to the success.
So the one last thing, and I don't know if I'm supposed to go into this or not, but you're kind of thinking, you got to have something to do. So you're kind of thinking about writing a book,
Yeah.
right? What would that book be?
It's interesting because I think I really know better the minute I sit down and start it. But I think my life is kind of unique from my kid. There's just a lot of in-depth to it, and it all relates to each other. But the primary focus would be on Yard House, that story. But there's some interesting things in my childhood that apply to the Yard House. But it's really just the stories and obviously to really inspire people.
Start with the title.
I don't know. When we were talking earlier, I thought it would be more like To All the Girls I've Loved Before.
No.
You got to have a working title for the book. That'll write itself. What's your working
title? If we're
title?
soft pitching, I mean, is the importance of pipes and pies? I don't know where.
I think plumbing is plumbing is the title of it.
I actually kind of love that.
Brandy had the title earlier. She says, when you blow a keg.
No, No, it's going to be. I'm going to sit down.
Cleaning
I'm going to
pipes.
probably start it in a couple weeks and just see how it starts coming. I'm going to let my fingers do the talking. Type it.
That's the hottest thing you've ever said to me.
Still, thanks for being here. Hey, and everybody out there, thanks for watching. Hey, if you like what you saw, hit that subscribe button or don't, but you should. Okay, we love you. We'll see you next time on Happening Now.
Happening now. It's happening now. Happening now. We'll hammer.
It's happening now. It's happening now.